Hello everybody, welcome back to All About the Bash here on the Odd-Sided Dice YouTube channel. In this video we're going to have a look at the next member of our Inquisitor 28 kill team. And still using the inspiration of our John Blanche Inquisitor sketchbook, in this video we're going to do our take of the Black Priest. For this build we're mainly going to be relying on two kits. The first being House de Lac from Necromunda, and the second going to be parts from the Rangers of the Admech. We'll be using these House de Lac models in a lot of the future builds. That's because, as you can see from the artwork in the Inquisitor sketchbook, many have the aesthetic of those long flowing robes. And so with everything laid out in front of me, it's time to get on with the actual build for this model. First we're going to get the main structure of the body together. So pulling one of the sprues from the House de Lac kit and throwing some light on the subject, we can get cutting. Now, as with a lot of GW kits these days, the actual bodies themselves are made up from multiple parts. So it's always good to have the instructions next to you so you can see what numbers on the sprue go to making the body you've chosen. Now, I, like a lot of people, cut my parts quite close to the model themselves. This way I'm going to remove the majority of the flash from the model that I don't need from the actual sprue. But that being said, if you're slightly unsure, you can always cut further away from the model part and then marry up to the picture in the instructions when you go about cleaning the model. So once we have all the parts cut, it's a good job now to go around and clean off any bits of flash or any mold lines that remain on the model. At this point you've got plenty of options for a way to do this. There's obviously specific tools like mold line removers, but again, I, like many people, use one tool for multiple uses, and there's not many better hobby tools than a hobby knife with a nice sharp blade. Now, it may be that both these tools aren't really going to be the best option for you, and normally when I've finished cleaning a part with a hobby blade, I'm going to further go over the model with some form of small craft file. This is to even out any cuts or scratches I've made in the plastic, but there's nothing to stop you going straight to the file. So for the arms and the majority of the weapons for this model, we're going to turn to our Admech kit. This kit is a favourite of many of the Inq 28 kit bashers, as the look of the arms and the weapons on these kits ties very well into the Blanchitsu look we're going for. Our Black Priest is going to be armed with a sword in one hand and some form of bolter in the other. Now, the arm we've chosen for the gun has more one of the Admech weapons in hand, so at some point we're going to have to do a weapon change. Offering the arms up to the model, we can see that the shoulder armour of the de Lac and the shoulder armour of the Admech doesn't really fit into place, and therefore the arms are going to look too far down on the model, and as such visually it won't really work. Both arms suffer from this, so as we're going to have to decide which of the two we're going to remove. Before I decide, what I'm going to do is try the arm in various positions to try and get an idea about which of the two would be the best to remove. This also lets me get an idea of how the stance of the model will be, and at this point then I can decide whether the arm I've chosen is going to be right for the build. I am happy with the choice I've made, and because I want to hide as many joints as possible, I've decided I'm going to remove the shoulder armour from the Admech arm. It is quite a bulky bit at the top of the arm, but luckily enough, hopefully, the shoulder armour of the de Lac will be able to hide any issues I have with the removal. So returning to my three main tools, the cutters, my hobby knife and my file, I'm able to remove small parts at a time, making sure they're as smooth as possible, and eventually making it so the arm is going to fit in roughly the right position. It's always best to take as much time as possible when doing anything like this, and often removing small amounts of material at any one time allows you not to ruin the part you're working with, and therefore having to start from scratch. Also, it's always good to test fit your part as you go, as this will let you know when you're getting close to having removed all the bits that you need to remove. Once you're happy you've got to this point, the final stage should always be to reach for the file, making sure to smooth down any edges, but this will also slightly score the surface and eventually make it easier for your glue to bond the two parts together. With a final test fit, I'm now happy with the arm that's the way I've got it. It's going to be able to fit into position, and so I can move on to doing the same on the other arm. But for now, I want to address the gun he's got in his hand, because even though this AdMech pistol looks great, in the actual artwork the model is armed with some form of bolter. So reaching into my parts kit, I have a bolter that I've already taken the pistol grip off. So what I'm going to try and do is remove the equivalent on the AdMech arm, leaving the pistol grip in place and making it easier to add on the bolter. This again is just a job for the cutter and the file, taking small little cuts of the material until I'm left with what I want. And then with just a brief clean up, using my hobby knife and my file again, I'm left with the two parts I need to now fully create this arm. Now, although the two parts are plastic, I'm unsure how they will react just using normal plastic cement. So at this point, and rather than risk it, I'm going to reach for my super glue to be able to attach these two parts. So just before I do so, one last test fit, just to make sure I'm happy. Because as the old saying goes, it's always better to measure twice and cut once. But I suppose we'll have to change it for a kit bashing mantra of test fit twice, get super glue all over your fingers once. It's these part of the builds that normally when these models start to come together, and when you're working towards a piece of artwork as your inspiration, it's always nice to see when your take on the model starts to come into existence. Because I could have left the pistol from the AdMech kit, but to be honest, I wanted it to be as close as possible to the artwork. So now, with the three main parts of the body all together, I can break out the plastic glue and put them all in position. The joys of using the plastic glue over the super glue means I get a few moments working time until the glue starts to cure, and as such can make any final adjustments before I literally have to break the model apart again. I can really see this model coming together now, and with the body and arms being in position, it lets me make a decision on the final main part of the model, that being the type and position of head we're going to use for this model. Now for this, I've reached back into the bits box and found there some previous Forge World Necromunda upgrade that I had for a previous project. Now, because I'm attaching resin to plastic, I'm going to go back to the super glue. This lets me get a far better bond between the two parts. I always find it's better to get the model, body and arm together first, because from that you can make an easier decision about the direction the head is looking in. I know a lot of other kit bashers don't do this way, but normally fit the head they're going to use first. And I just suppose it's just the way that I like working with my models. Now the final bit to finish off the head, as you can see in the artwork, the Black Priest has some kind of radar dish on the side of his head. So again, back to the kit box, I pull another greebly part from the Wild West Exodus kit that I made use of during the servo skull build. and again using super glue, I attach it to the side of the head, and it really mimics that radar that we can see in the artwork. At this point, really the main part of the build for this model has been completed, and all that remains is to add any other further part that you feel necessary for the model. Now in the artwork, you can see the Black Priest has these tassels, which we are going to mimic running off the hose that's on the torso of the model. So for this, I'm going to go back to my AdMech sprue, and on one of the backpacks you can see there's the hose and sort of like little exhaust. So I'm going to cut these clear and use these to finish off the hose on the torso. Doing this is actually going to have an added benefit, because adding any parts like this that sit outside the main silhouette of the model is always going to add some form of dynamism to the model, and as such add an impression of movement into the model. Now, just being lazy, I'm going to reach for the super glue again, because I don't want to be holding this part in position while the plastic glue starts to cure. And the fact that I'm getting really impatient. Now I'm able to see the goalpost for this build, which is probably one of my worst traits, because one of the best things you can have during any model build is to have the ability to have patience. Because if you're patient and don't rush through the build, a lot of the time the overall model will be more of a joy to put together. Now here I'm just adding some final little parts, because he's going to be the member of a warband. I want the model to be tooled up with all the gear he needs to be out in the field. And paying homage to my friend Seamus, I've always got to include a part from a Frostgrave model at some point. So with these two little additional greeblies, I create some kind of belt order for my Black Priest, because you never know what really a Black Priest will carry into battle. It's also as well, the addition of these little parts really will make the model unique to yourself, as it's very unlikely that even though people can follow a main build, they may not have these little parts available, and therefore it means with all these kit bashes there will never be a model that's exactly the same as yours. So with these final two little parts, our kit bash for the Black Priest is done. And hopefully you can see that using the John Blanche artwork as our inspiration, we've been able to create a very passable interpretation of a Black Priest for our Inc. 28 kill team. It's been a real pleasure to do this model, and I'd like to thank you all for watching the build. If you would like to see more of this kill team and see finished models such as this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next bash.